the millionaire's assistant who healed his heart and became his wife. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I would like to ask you for a small favor. Please make sure you are subscribed to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our upcoming stories. Your support helps this channel grow, and it truly means a lot. Where are you watching from today? Feel free to share your city or state in the comments below. Thank you so much. Now, let us return to our main character. It was a cold, heavy evening in downtown Manhattan, the kind of night when the city lights turned into long reflections across the wet pavement. The rain had been falling for hours, drenching every sidewalk, flooding the gutters, and forcing people to hurry home under umbrellas. But Adrian Hale did not rush anywhere. He stood alone outside the Memorial Hall, letting the rain soak through the shoulders of his black suit. Tonight marked 3 years since the accident that had taken the life of his wife, Claire. He had attended the annual remembrance ceremony, just as he did every year, shaking hands with friends, business partners, and distant relatives who did not truly understand what grief felt like. And as he stepped out into the rain, he felt the same heavy silence pressing against his ribs, the same hollow ache that never faded. Adrian Hale was one of the most recognizable millionaires on the East Coast. He built a global technology corporation before turning 35, had his face on the front cover of business magazines, and carried the kind of influence that shaped entire industries. But none of that mattered when he walked into an empty home every night. Wealth could buy convenience, security, and a polished facade, but it could not buy back the person he had lost. He walked toward his parked black SUV, trying to breathe through the heaviness in his chest. The rain hit harder, drumming against the awning of the building, turning into a gray curtain that blurred the world around him. As he approached the street corner, a sudden gust of wind ripped through the construction site above. A sharp, metallic screech echoed through the air. Before Adrian could look up, a large pane of glass broke loose from the scaffold, plummeting straight toward him. There was no time to think, only a single flash of movement. Someone grabbed his arm and yanked him backward with surprising force. The glass slammed into the pavement where he had stood just seconds earlier, shattering into 1,000 razor-sharp pieces. The impact sent shards flying across the wet street, clattering like ice. Adrian stumbled, disoriented, breath caught in his throat. When he turned, he found himself face to face with a young woman, soaked from head to toe. Her hair clung to her cheeks, her jacket was drenched, and she clutched a cardboard box that had been nearly torn open by the rain. Paper spilled onto the sidewalk, fluttering like wounded birds. "I'm so sorry," she said, kneeling to gather the scattered documents. Her voice trembled slightly, more from adrenaline than fear. The wind pulled the lid open. "I did not mean to get in your way." Adrian crouched to help her, still shaken from what had just happened. "You saved my life," he said quietly. "You absolutely got in my way, and you saved my life." She froze for a moment, eyes widening as if she had not fully processed what she had done. Then she gave a small, awkward smile. "Anyone would have pulled you back. I just reacted." But that was not true. Most people would have screamed or stepped aside or simply not noticed in time. This woman had moved instantly, without regard for her own safety. As she gathered the last set of papers, Adrian noticed something beneath the torn sleeve of her jacket. A long, faded scar traced down her forearm, oddly familiar. But before he could look closer, she pulled the sleeve down quickly and stood up. "I'm sorry again," she said, hugging the damaged box to her chest. "I hope you are not hurt." "I am fine," Adrian replied, though his pulse had not yet settled. "May I at least know your name?" She hesitated for a heartbeat, then answered softly, "My name is Mia." The rain continued pouring around them, but for a brief moment, the world felt unusually still. Mia gave him a polite nod, stepped back, and hurried across the sidewalk, disappearing into the blur of the storm. Adrian watched her go with a strange feeling settling in his chest, something between curiosity and déjà vu. He did not know why her presence lingered in his mind. He did not know why her scar looked familiar. He did not know why his instinct told him he would see her again. But he would. And when that moment came, everything in his life would begin to change. The next morning arrived with a clear sky stretching over Manhattan, as if the storm from the night before had never existed. The city moved with its usual rhythm, horns echoing between the buildings, and workers rushing through the revolving doors of Hale Corporation. Inside the lobby, The air smelled faintly of polished stone and fresh coffee, a stark contrast to the cold rain that framed Adrian Hale's memory of the previous night. Adrian stepped out of the elevator, adjusting the cuff of his tailored shirt as he reviewed his schedule for the day. Meetings, strategy reviews, investor calls, and a lunch with a visiting senator. The list was long, but his mind was elsewhere. He kept replaying the moment in the rain, the split second when the falling glass could have ended his life, and the young woman who had saved him as if guided by sharp instinct. Mia. Her name had stayed with him more than he expected. He pushed the thought aside as he entered the conference floor. His chief of staff, Helen, hurried toward him with a folder in hand and the kind of expression that meant she was about to bring up a problem he had no time to solve. "Good morning, Mr. Hale," she said. "There has been a sudden change in the personnel schedule. We need a new executive assistant immediately. The previous one resigned overnight." Adrian exhaled slowly. "Did we at least screen qualified applicants?" "Yes, sir. We have 3 candidates waiting in the interview room. One of them submitted her application early this morning." Helen opened the folder and handed him the first resume. "Her name is Mia Collins." Adrian froze for a moment. He looked up sharply. "Mia?" "Yes, sir. She came in right when we opened. She says she is determined to work here." The echo of last night's storm flickered in his memory. The scar on her arm, the quiet steadiness in her voice, the way she pulled him out of danger with absolute certainty. "Send her in first," he said. A few minutes later, the office door opened gently. Mia stepped inside, dressed neatly in a cream blouse and a modest navy skirt. Her hair was tied back, and she held a cleaned, reorganized folder of documents that looked nothing like the soaked cardboard box she had struggled with the night before. "Good morning, Mr. Hale," she said, her voice calm but soft. "Thank you for meeting with me." Adrian observed her for a long moment. She looked different in the office light, composed, professional. But the quiet intensity in her eyes remained the same. It was as if she carried experience far beyond her age, hidden beneath layers of gentleness. "I was not expecting to see you here," Adrian said. "We barely exchanged a few words last night." "I know," Mia replied, "but I applied for this position weeks ago. I finally received an interview slot this morning. It was not my intention to surprise you." That was believable. The corporation processed thousands of applications. It was not unusual for schedules to shift. Adrian gestured for her to sit. "Tell me why you believe you can handle this role. The expectations are intense, the pace is demanding, and discretion is non-negotiable." Mia folded her hands on her lap. "I understand the pressure, Mr. Hale. I have worked in administrative support roles before. I am organized, disciplined, and committed to earning trust through my actions. I also know how to manage crises. I do not panic easily." Adrian raised an eyebrow. "Last night proved that." A faint flush appeared on her cheeks. "I only reacted, sir. Anyone else would have done the same." He knew that was not true, but he chose not to challenge her. Instead, he asked a series of precise questions about scheduling, project management, communication structures, crisis handling, digital archiving, and confidentiality. To his surprise, her answers were direct, measured, and intelligent. She understood the hierarchy of his corporation, the pressure of public scrutiny, and the delicate balance between corporate loyalty and professional distance. When the interview ended, Adrian leaned back in his chair. "You are remarkably prepared, Miss Collins." "Thank you, sir. But one thing concerns me," he added. "You appeared at the exact moment something dangerous happened to me last night. That alone raises questions." End. Mia's expression remained calm, but he noticed a brief flicker of tension around her eyes. "I was only passing by the construction site. I reacted on instinct, nothing more." Adrian studied her carefully. She did not look away. She did not tremble. But he sensed something deeper behind her composure. After a long pause, he finally said, "Report to Helen. You are hired." A quiet breath escaped her lips. "Thank you, Mr. Hale. I will not disappoint you." As she left the room, Adrian felt the same unsettled certainty return. Something about Mia Collins did not add up. Something in her past remained hidden, and he sensed this was only the beginning. For the first few days, Mia Collins adjusted to her new role with quiet determination. She arrived early, stayed late, and learned the complicated internal structure of Hale Corporation faster than anyone expected. She organized Adrian's schedule with near-perfect accuracy, anticipated logistical problems before they appeared, and handled investor correspondence with a level of professionalism that made the entire executive floor take notice. But for Adrian Hale, admiration came with a shadow of unease. Something about the way Mia moved through the office felt familiar, almost rehearsed, not in a forced or artificial sense, but in the way of someone who had studied him before, someone who already knew the rhythm of his day and the weight he carried behind closed doors. He tried to ignore it. He tried to focus on the endless stream of work that demanded his attention. But the questions lingered in the background, waiting. One afternoon, as the sun dipped behind the skyline and cast long golden stripes across the polished office floor, Adrian reviewed the files for an upcoming acquisition. The numbers were strong, but the background checks had raised concerns. He pressed a hand against his forehead, trying to work through the tension building behind his eyes. Mia knocked gently on the open door. "Mr. Hale, you have a conference call in 10 minutes. Would you like a fresh cup of coffee before it begins?" Adrian looked up. "Yes, thank you, Mia." She returned a moment later, placing the cup on his desk with steady hands. But as she turned to leave, his computer chimed. An email notification appeared with a subject line that tightened the air in the room. "Recovered footage Claire Hale memorial file." The security department had finally restored a corrupted video clip from his late wife's final project. Adrian's breath hitched. His fingers hovered over the mouse. Mia paused when she heard the sharp shift in his breathing. "Is something wrong, sir?" Adrian tried to maintain his composure. "It is nothing urgent." He clicked the video. The image flickered, then stabilized. His wife Claire appeared on the screen, standing in the old laboratory she once loved. Her smile was tired but warm. Yet only a few seconds into the recording, the tone shifted. She looked over her shoulder, whispered something he could not fully hear, and her expression turned fearful. The memory hit him like a blow. His chest tightened, his pulse pounded. A familiar wave of panic surged through him, one he had battled for 3 years. His vision blurred at the edges, breath shortening, mind spiraling into the cold space where grief lived. Before he could lose control completely, Mia hurried to his side. "Mr. Hale," she said firmly but gently, placing a steady hand on the arm of his chair. "Focus on your breathing. Sit back. Keep your eyes on me." Her voice was calm, grounded, almost trained. She guided him to inhale slowly, exhale steadily, repeat the pattern until the dizziness began to fade. She adjusted the lighting, dimming the glare that triggered him, and pushed the video window aside without closing it entirely. Adrian stared at her, startled by how effortlessly she had taken control of the situation. "How did you know what to do?" Mia stepped back, clasping her hands in front of her. "I used to volunteer at a crisis center for college students. Anxiety attacks were common." Her answer was reasonable, perfectly reasonable. Yet something in her tone suggested a deeper truth she chose not to reveal. Adrian leaned back, running a hand through his hair as the remnants of panic settled. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Most people freeze when this happens." "I am not most people, sir," Mia replied with a soft, almost distant smile. Later that evening, as the office emptied and city lights illuminated the windows, Adrian attempted to return to work. But on the corner of his desk, he noticed a small stack of documents Mia had reorganized for him. Her handwriting in the notes was immaculate, but something else caught his attention. One of the pages contained an old photograph of the memorial hall from years ago. The camera angle was from across the street, as if shot by a passerby. He turned the page over. No label, no date. No reason for it to be among his current files. Why would Mia know exactly where to place this? Did she recognize it? Had she been there before the night she saved him? He tried to dismiss the thought, but the unease returned stronger than before. At the end of the day, Mia appeared at the doorway again. "Is there anything else you need before I leave, Mr. Hale?" Adrian looked at her closely, searching for something he could not yet name. "No," he answered. "That will be all. Get home safely." She nodded politely and walked away, her footsteps silent against the marble floor. When she disappeared into the hallway, Adrian looked back at the photograph, then at the reflection of the city in the window. For the first time, he wondered if Mia Collins worked for him, or if she had come into his life with a purpose he did not yet understand. The following week at Hale Corporation unfolded with its usual pressure. Meetings stacked on top of one another, analysts demanded updates on quarterly projections, and the legal department rushed a set of revised contracts that needed Adrian's approval before the end of the day. Yet none of that occupied his mind the way his new assistant did. Mia worked flawlessly, and that should have comforted him. but instead, every small detail she seemed to understand too well only added to his growing unease. She memorized the structure of the company with impressive speed, anticipated what he would ask for before he voiced it, and moved through the building as if she had known the place long before she was hired. Still, there was nothing he could confront her with. Everything she did was exactly what any exceptional assistant would do. Everything made sense until the moment it did not. That moment arrived on a Thursday afternoon. Adrian was speaking with the security director in the hallway outside the executive conference room. They were discussing new information about a recent cyber intrusion. It was not the first attack the corporation had faced, but the timing concerned him. Someone had accessed archived files related to Claire, and that alone made the situation impossible to ignore. The meeting ended abruptly when a shout echoed from the far end of the hallway. Adrian turned sharply. A man wearing a baseball cap had grabbed Mia's purse and was sprinting toward the elevator lobby. Paper spilled from her arms as she stumbled backward. It happened so fast that for a split second, no one moved. Then Adrian reacted. "Security!" he shouted, running toward them. Before the guards reached the thief, the man shoved Mia hard, forcing her to catch herself against the wall. The sleeve of her blouse tore open in the process, ripped clean from the elbow to the wrist. And that was when Adrian saw it. The scar, a long, curved scar that ran down her forearm, pale against her skin. The exact shape and position he remembered from the accident report. The report that mentioned a teenage girl who had tried to help Claire in her final moments. A girl who had received the same injury from falling debris. The scar was identical. Mia pressed her hand over the torn sleeve, as if trying to hide it, while security tackled the thief near the elevator doors. Adrian's breath caught in his throat. For a moment, the chaos around them disappeared. There was only that scar burned into his memory from years of grief and unanswered questions. He stepped closer. "Mia," he said quietly, "where did you get that?" Her eyes widened with genuine fear, not of the thief, but of the question itself. "It is nothing," she said quickly. "It was a long time ago. That is not what I asked." She looked away, clutching her arm tighter, her breathing unsteady. The guards dragged the thief out through the security hallway, leaving the corridor empty except for the two of them. Mia tried to gather her fallen documents, but her hands shook too much. Adrian knelt beside her, his voice low but firm. "I have seen that scar before. I have seen it in a police report. I want the truth." And Mia swallowed hard, her eyes shining with a mixture of guilt and fear. For the first time since she stepped into Hale Corporation, the mask of calm she always wore began to crack. "I was there," she whispered. "I was at the scene the night Claire Hale died." The world around Adrian seemed to tilt. It felt as if he were hearing an echo from a dream he never wanted to relive. "You were the witness," he said. "The one who disappeared before investigators could find her." Mia nodded slowly, tears forming but not falling. "I tried to help her. I tried to save her. She asked me to call for help, but I was 19. I panicked. I did not know what to do. I called too late." Her voice broke. "I have lived with that guilt every single day." Adrian stood completely still, his mind flooded with memories, sirens, cold hospital lights, unanswered questions, and years of not knowing what really happened. "You should have come forward," he said, his tone sharp with pain he thought he had buried. "You should have told the police. You should have told me." "I could not," she whispered. "I was threatened. I was terrified. And I knew if I spoke up, someone else would get hurt." He stared at her, torn between anger, confusion, and the unsettling feeling that he was missing a piece of truth far larger than her guilt. Mia wiped a tear from her cheek and whispered the words that shattered what remained of his calm. "There is more you need to know, Mr. Hale. What happened that night was not an accident. Someone wanted your wife dead." The hallway fell silent. Adrian felt the ground shift beneath him. And in that moment, he understood one thing with absolute clarity. Whatever Mia Collins was hiding, it was only the beginning. The moment Mia spoke those words, the hallway outside the executive wing seemed to fall into complete silence. The hum of printers, the distant chatter of employees, even the sound of elevator doors opening and closing all faded behind the weight of what she had just revealed. Adrian Hale stood motionless, staring at the young woman who had entered his life as a quiet, capable assistant. The woman who had saved him in the rain. the woman who had calmed his panic without hesitation. And now, the woman who had confessed that she had been present the night his wife died. And according to her, Claire's death had not been an accident. Mia, Adrian said slowly, steadying his breath, you need to tell me everything, right now. Mia closed her eyes for a moment, bracing herself. Her torn sleeve hung loosely over her scar, the undeniable evidence that connected her to the darkest night of his life. I did not come here to hurt you, she whispered. I swear that. End. Then help me understand, Adrian said, voice low but unyielding. Start from the beginning. Tell me what you saw. Mia nodded, though fear flickered behind her eyes. That night, 3 years ago, she began, I was walking home from my part-time job near the old laboratory. I heard shouting, a woman's voice. I followed the sound and saw Claire lying on the ground, hurt. There was debris everywhere. A metal beam had fallen. Adrian's chest tightened. He had read the autopsy report a dozen times, but hearing it spoken aloud by someone who had been there felt like tearing open a wound. I tried to help her, Mia continued, her voice trembling. She was conscious, barely. She told me she had found something dangerous, something she needed to expose. She asked me to call for help. I pulled out my phone, but before I could dial, I heard footsteps behind me. Her hands shook slightly. A man appeared. I never saw his face. He told me that if I made a sound, if I called for help, I would not live to see morning. He kicked the debris toward me. That is how I got the scar. Adrian felt a cold shock spread through him. And you believed him. I was 19, she said quietly. I was alone. I panicked. I froze. By the time he left and I finally called, it was too late. Tears filled her eyes, not dramatic, not forced, just the plain, painful truth. I have carried that guilt every day since. Adrian ran a hand across his jaw, trying to steady the storm in his mind. Anger, grief, confusion. But beneath it all, a sense of something far larger moving beneath the surface. Why come here, he asked. Why now? Why become my assistant? Mia hesitated before answering. Because I recently learned who the man behind the accident really was, she said. And he is connected to someone inside Hale Corporation. The words hit Adrian like a physical blow. You are saying someone inside my own company is responsible for Claire's death? Yes, Mia whispered. And he knows that the truth is resurfacing. That is why someone tried to hack into the memorial files. That is why you were almost killed last week. The falling glass was not an accident either. Adrian stared at her, horrified. The idea had flickered in his mind before too many coincidences, too many sudden intrusions, but he had never allowed himself to consider it fully. Who is it? He demanded. Mia looked down. I cannot say yet. I only know he is powerful, connected, and he has eyes inside this building. What do you mean you cannot say? Adrian pressed. Because I do not have enough proof, she said, meeting his eyes again. If I accuse the wrong person, he will destroy both of us before the truth comes out. But I am close. I have been collecting information ever since I recognized that the hacking patterns matched what happened 3 years ago. Adrian inhaled sharply. You have been investigating this alone? Mia nodded. I never meant to drag you into danger, but after last night, after the glass fell, I realized he is not just hiding the truth anymore. He is trying to remove anyone who might uncover it. Adrian paced a few steps, gripping the back of a chair, his mind racing. For years, he had blamed fate, tragedy, bad timing. But now, the pieces were shifting into a picture he had never imagined, one of betrayal and calculated violence. Mia, he said finally, his voice steady but dark with resolve. You are not dealing with this alone anymore. She looked at him with surprise. Mr. Hale. No, he interrupted firmly. If someone inside my company murdered my wife, then I will bring him down myself. But I need the truth. All of it. And I need you to trust me. Tears slipped down Mia's cheeks, silent and raw. I do trust you, she whispered. But this will be dangerous. Adrian's expression hardened. Then let it be dangerous. He stepped closer. Because whoever destroyed my life 3 years ago has no idea what is coming next. The next 48 hours moved with a tense quietness that felt unnatural inside Hale Corporation. Adrian Hale arrived early, stayed late, and spent most of his time reviewing internal documents and cross-checking access logs. He trusted very few people, and even the thought of someone inside his own company orchestrating his wife's death made every hallway feel colder. Mia Collins kept working as his assistant, but now there was no distance between them in purpose. She updated him on the patterns she had tracked, the anonymous messages she had received, and the digital footprints she recognized from the night of the accident. Each detail drew the same conclusion. Someone with authority had both motive and access. But the more progress they made, the more Adrian felt the sensation of being watched. By Friday morning, the tension broke into the open. As Adrian reviewed financial reports in his office, his chief of staff, Helen, hurried inside carrying a sealed envelope. Her expression looked strained, almost nervous. "Mr. Hale," she said, "your uncle, Board Chairman Richard Hale, has called for an emergency meeting with the full board. He said it is urgent and cannot be delayed." Adrian frowned. "On what grounds?" She hesitated. "The letter says there are concerns regarding financial misconduct directed toward you." A cold silence filled the room. Adrian took the envelope and opened it. Inside was a formal accusation signed by several senior executives he had worked with for years. The document claimed he had rerouted corporate funds without authorization, manipulated quarterly projections, and hidden key expenses. Fabricated evidence, perfectly constructed, designed to destroy his position. His uncle's signature appeared at the bottom, confirming the meeting would take place at 1 o'clock in the main boardroom. Mia entered the office just as Adrian lowered the papers onto the desk. What happened? Adrian handed her the accusations. She scanned the pages, her eyes darkening with alarm. "This is a setup," she said. "He is trying to remove you before you uncover the truth." Adrian tightened his jaw. "He must think I will walk into that meeting unprepared. He believes you will panic," Mia added. "That is what he counts on." Adrian stepped away from the desk, gripping the edge of the window frame as he stared out at the Manhattan skyline. "My uncle mentored me. I trusted him more than anyone. And all this time," Mia's voice softened, "people hide who they really are until the moment their power is threatened." He turned to her. "If he is behind Claire's death, then this meeting is not just an attack on my career. It is a way to silence the truth." Mia nodded slowly, and he would not stop there. As the clock approached 1 o'clock, Adrian felt a growing certainty. The board meeting was not merely a trial, it was a trap. When they entered the executive corridor leading to the boardroom, the atmosphere was uncomfortably tense. Senior executives stood in small groups, whispering. Security guards stood positioned near the doors, which was unusual for an internal meeting. Inside, the long table was already full. Adrian's uncle sat at the head, an expression of cold authority carved into his features. "Adrian," Richard said, voice steady and unbothered, "thank you for joining us. Let us begin." But before Adrian could respond, two men in dark suits stepped behind Mia and placed firm hands on her shoulders. Adrian reacted instantly. "What do you think you are doing?" "She is my assistant." Richard raised a hand, completely calm. "Your assistant is under internal investigation as well. It appears she has been accessing confidential files without clearance." Mia froze. The accusation was exactly what Richard needed to remove her from the room and to silence her permanently if necessary. Adrian stepped forward. "She accessed those files under my instruction." "Of course you would say that," Richard replied smoothly, "but this matter concerns corporate integrity. Remove her." The guards tightened their grip. Mia looked at Adrian, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do not let him control the narrative. You know what he is doing." Adrian's heart pounded. He wanted to fight, to pull her back, to stop whatever Richard had planned. But he forced himself to stay composed. Losing control here would give his uncle exactly what he wanted. He met Mia's eyes. "Stay calm, I will fix this." "End of." She nodded faintly as the guards led her into the hallway. When the doors shut behind her, Richard folded his hands. "Now that distractions are gone, let us proceed." Adrian took his seat slowly, never breaking eye contact with the man he once considered family, because in that moment, he understood exactly what this meeting was. It was not an investigation. It was not a discussion. It was the opening move in a war that had begun 3 years earlier. And he would not walk away from it quietly. The boardroom felt suffocating as Adrian Hale sat across from the man who had shaped so much of his life. His uncle, Richard Hale, carried himself with the authority of someone who believed he had already won. The executives seated along the polished table shifted uneasily, some unsure what to believe, others pretending they had not already chosen a side. A projection screen lit up behind Richard. "Before we proceed, I want the board to review the financial discrepancies our auditors uncovered, he announced, clicking a remote. Graphs, altered statements, and falsified transaction records flashed across the screen. Accusations. Carefully crafted lies. Mr. Hale, Richard said, turning toward his nephew with an expression of grave disappointment. These documents suggest deliberate financial misconduct across multiple divisions under your leadership. Adrian steadied his hands beneath the table. These accusations are fabricated. Richard raised an eyebrow. You will have an opportunity to defend yourself. However, your assistant who has been removed from the premises has been involved in unauthorized access to confidential archives. Her actions appear aligned with your own. He paused, suspicious, to say the least. Adrian felt the rage rise, but he kept his voice level. Mia accessed those files at my request because someone inside this company has been altering records. An extraordinary claim, Richard replied, his tone smooth. But extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. The door to the boardroom suddenly opened. Everyone turned. Mia Collins stepped inside, flanked by 2 security guards. Her blouse was wrinkled from the struggle earlier, and her torn sleeve exposed the scar she no longer tried to hide. But what struck Adrian most was the look in her eyes, determined, steady, unafraid. Mia, Adrian whispered. The guards began to pull her back, but she held up a small black device in her hand, an old, worn external drive. I have evidence, she said, her voice strong enough to echo through the room, and it belongs to Claire Hale. The entire boardroom fell silent. Richard turned slowly, his expression tightening. Remove her. Now. But Adrian stood. If she has evidence related to Claire, then she stays. Several board members murmured in agreement. The political balance in the room shifted. No one wanted to appear biased if a former executive's death was involved. The guards released Mia. She stepped forward and placed the device on the table in front of Adrian. I kept this hidden for 3 years, she said softly. It is the last thing Claire entrusted to me before she lost consciousness. Adrian's breath left him in a sharp exhale. Play it, he said. Mia connected the device to the projector. The screen flickered once, then displayed a series of folders labeled with dates and timestamps. She opened a video file. Claire appeared on the screen, sitting in her laboratory, her voice low but urgent. If something happens to me, she said, it will not be an accident. I have uncovered evidence that Richard Hale has been siphoning funds from the charitable foundation. Gasps filled the room. Claire continued, I believe he plans to frame someone else if the truth surfaces. I fear he may become desperate. The video ended abruptly. Adrian felt the world still. Richard stood, face pale, fury burning behind his eyes. This is fabricated. It is manipulated. But one of the board members spoke first. The timestamp predates her death by hours. The metadata is intact. Another board member added, we need to call for a full investigation. Richard's control over the room slipped. He pointed at Mia. She stole those files. She altered them. Mia held her ground. I was 19 when Claire gave this to me. I was terrified, but I never touched the contents. I knew one day the truth would matter. Richard slammed his hand on the table. This is nonsense. Adrian stepped between him and Mia. Your lies end today. Security officers entered the room, alerted by the commotion. They eyed the board nervously, waiting for instructions. The lead board member stood, effective immediately, until a full investigation is conducted. Richard Hale is to be relieved of his duties as chairman. Richard's face drained of color. You cannot do this. But the officers moved toward him. You framed me, Adrian said quietly. You killed my wife, and you tried to silence the only witness who could expose you. Richard's mask finally cracked, revealing the cold hatred beneath. You have no idea what you have started. The officers escorted him out of the boardroom as he struggled and shouted, his power collapsing around him like a burning tower. When the doors closed, the room exhaled as one. Mia turned toward Adrian, exhausted but steady. It is over, she said. He shook his head slowly. Not yet, but today, the truth finally found a voice. For the first time in 3 years, Adrian felt the first faint breath of something he thought he had lost forever. Hope. The boardroom remained in a stunned silence long after Richard Hale had been escorted out. The tension, the accusations, the explosive truth about Claire's death, everything still hung in the air like smoke after a fire. Some board members whispered to one another, Others pretended to organize documents simply to have something to do with their hands. But Adrian Hale did not move. He stood at the head of the table, the place where his uncle had sat moments earlier, and tried to steady his breathing. His chest felt tight, not from fear, but from the slow realization that the truth he had been denied for 3 years had finally broken through the darkness. Mia remained near the projector, her hands resting lightly on the table, her expression weary but unwavering. She had walked into the lion's den without hesitation, carrying the evidence that no one else had been brave enough to protect. When the last few board members left the room, closing the double doors behind them, only 2 people remained: Adrian and Mia. For a moment, neither spoke. The events of the morning clung to them like a heavy fog. Adrian finally broke the silence. "You could have been killed," he said quietly, bringing that drive into the boardroom, confronting him in front of everyone. "My uncle is a dangerous man." Mia met his gaze, her voice soft but steady. "He was already trying to remove me. If I stayed silent, he would have silenced me another way. This was the only chance to expose him." Adrian looked down at the black drive still resting on the tabletop. "Claire trusted you," he said. "In her final moments, she trusted you with the truth." Mia's eyes softened with grief. "She was brave, far braver than I was that night." "You were 19, Adrian replied gently. "Fear does not make you guilty. It makes you human." Mia looked away, emotion tightening her throat. "I wish I had done more. I wish I had saved her." Adrian stepped closer. "Mia, you did save something. You saved her voice. And today, that voice helped expose the man who destroyed her." Mia blinked back tears. "I just did what I should have done 3 years ago." Adrian wanted to say more, but before he could speak, Helen rushed into the room, her face pale. "Mr. Hale, Mia, you both need to see this." She handed Adrian a tablet with a live security feed playing. Richard Hale was no longer in custody. The footage showed him fighting off the officers outside the building, shoving one to the pavement, and sprinting toward the parking garage. The timestamp was only minutes old. "He escaped?" Adrian said sharply. "Yes," Helen replied, "and that is not all. He took a vehicle from the restricted fleet. We have no idea where he is going." Adrian's pulse thundered in his ears. "He is not going to run. He is going to retaliate." Mia's voice dropped. "He will come after us. He has lost everything. He will be desperate." The overhead lights flickered once, then steadied. Helen swallowed hard. "I already increased security around the building, but we need to move quickly. You should both leave by the secure elevator." But Adrian shook his head. "If he is coming for us, hiding will not stop him. We need to be ready." The lights flickered again. A cold thought settled in Adrian's mind. He is already inside. As if on cue, a loud crash echoed from the lower floor. Shouting followed. The building's alarm system triggered, blaring through the hallway. Helen stepped backward in fear. Mia moved closer to Adrian. "We need to go. Now." 7. They rushed toward the emergency stairwell as the sound of running footsteps traveled up from below. Adrian pushed open the stairwell door and guided Mia inside, keeping her behind him as they descended 2 flights. The building felt like a maze, every echo amplified by panic. When they reached the service level, Adrian pulled Mia into a side corridor. "Stay close to me." But before they could move further, the faint sound of a familiar voice echoed from the far end of the hallway. "Richard, Adrian, you think you won because of a video? You think you can destroy me?" His voice was warped with fury. Mia's breath caught. Adrian placed a reassuring hand on her back, guiding her behind him. The corridor lights buzzed overhead, casting long shadows down the concrete floor. Richard stepped into view, disheveled, eyes burning with a wild rage. "You took everything from me." Adrian stared back at him, calm but unyielding. "You destroyed yourself." "Oh," Richard pointed a trembling hand toward Mia. "And she should have stayed silent." Adrian moved instinctively, positioning himself between them. "You will not touch her." Richard lunged forward. Security officers burst into the corridor at the exact moment the conflict erupted. They tackled Richard from behind, forcing him to the ground as he kicked and shouted. His voice echoed against the walls, angry, frantic, defeated. It took 6 officers to restrain him. When they finally dragged him away, the hallway fell silent once more. Mia exhaled shakily, and Adrian placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "It is over," he said quietly, but Mia shook her head. "Not yet." And she was right. Justice had begun, but healing had not. For several long seconds after Richard Hale was taken away, the hallway outside the service level felt suspended in a strange, heavy quiet. The alarms had stopped, the shouting had faded, and the chaos that had consumed the day finally settled into a fragile stillness. Adrian and Mia remained where they were, standing beneath the dim fluorescent lights, as the weight of everything that had happened pressed gently against their shoulders. Mia drew a slow breath, exhaustion softening every line on her face. Adrian stepped closer, keeping his voice steady. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head. "No, I am just overwhelmed. I never thought the truth would come out this quickly." Adrian nodded, a quiet ache settling in his chest. 3 years, he said softly. 3 years of living with pieces that never fit, and today everything finally connected. Mia lowered her eyes, looking at the scar on her arm, the one she had tried to hide for so long. "I always wished I could have done more for Claire," she whispered. "I wish I had been brave enough to save her." All Doc. Adrian stepped in front of her, gently lifting her chin so she would meet his eyes. "Mia, Claire trusted you. She chose you. Even in her final moments, she knew you would protect what mattered. That courage saved the truth, and today it saved me." Tears shimmered in Mia's eyes. "I was so afraid." "Fear does not erase the good you did," Adrian said. "It only makes the courage you have now even greater." He guided her toward the private elevator. As they rode upward, the tension in their shoulders slowly eased, replaced by a quiet awareness that something had shifted not only in the company, but between them. When the doors opened onto the executive floor, warm late afternoon light filtered across the marble tiles, casting long streaks of gold in every direction. Adrian led Mia into his office. The floor-to-ceiling windows framed a sweeping view of Manhattan glowing under the setting Sunday, but he was not looking at the skyline. His gaze drifted toward the photograph on the shelf beside his desk, an image of his late wife standing in her lavender garden behind their home. Mia followed his eyes. "She loved lavender, did she not?" Adrian nodded with a gentle, bittersweet smile. "She planted that garden herself. She said lavender reminded her that peace always grows back, even after a harsh season." Mia stepped closer to the photo, emotion softening her voice. "It is beautiful." Adrian turned toward her. "I avoided that garden for 3 years. I could not bring myself to walk through it. Every time I tried, it felt like stepping into a life I had lost forever." Mia's expression warmed with quiet understanding. "Maybe it is time to see it again." He held her gaze. "I want to take you there, not because of the past, but because of what it means now." Mia hesitated. "Are you sure?" "Yes," he said. "You brought the truth to light. You faced danger to protect the memory of the woman I loved, and without you, none of this would have been uncovered." She looked down, emotion tightening her throat. "I did it because I owed her, and I owed you the truth." Adrian stepped closer, his voice steady and full of gratitude. "Mia, you do not owe me anything." She lifted her eyes. "I do not?" "No," he said, "but I owe you something. I owe you honesty, gratitude, and a heart that finally understands what healing truly looks like." Mia's breath caught, her pulse unsteady. "Adrian," he took her hands gently in his. "Claire saved me once by loving me. Today, you saved me again by giving me the truth. And now, for the first time in 3 years, I can finally breathe." The sun dipped lower, filling the office with soft lavender hues, an echo of the garden Claire once tended. Mia squeezed his hands gently, her voice trembling with emotion. "What happens now?" "We move forward," Adrian said. "Together, if you will allow it." Mia blinked through her tears. "I would like that." He drew her into a quiet, tender embrace. It was not rushed or dramatic. It was warm, steady, and full of the kind of hope neither of them thought they would feel again. Outside the window, the city glowed like a living tapestry of gold and violet. And somewhere beyond the skyline, a lavender garden waited no longer a place of sorrow, but a place where two hearts could finally begin again. For the first time since Claire's passing, Adrian Hale felt whole. And Mia Collins, after 3 years of carrying a truth alone, finally felt free. The past had spoken, justice had been served, and the future, scented softly with lavender, had just begun.